Hi, and thank you for joining us today on the Road to Recovery. I'm Rhonda Jackson, your host, serial entrepreneur, and small business advocate. Today, today's conversation, ladies and gentlemen, is truly amazing around all the pivots and all the change and the shift that we've been going through as business owners. And here we have a wonderful discussion with Bruce Shutan, a journalist and ghostwriter, on how to monetize our own personal experience. So I'm so looking forward to this discussion and welcome to the show, Bruce. Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Rhonda, it's such a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invite.
No, you're very welcome. So, for those that aren't as familiar with your body of work and who you are, do you mind giving us a little taste and an introduction?
Not at all. So I've been a journalist for 38 years. For 33 of those, I've written about the workplace for trade magazines.
Mhm.
And 10 years ago, I had a happy accident. I ended up ghostwriting the memoir of a South Florida philanthropist who always wanted to write a book about his life, but he didn't know how to go about it. And I was connected to him through one of my sisters.
Okay. All right. Here's the entree to the how to's. And today will be that discovery session. But one of the ways that I like to start the show is I like to ask guests for one word they would use to describe now. What would your word be, Bruce?
To me, it's simple, surreal.
Oh, okay. Say a little more. Why surreal?
Well, this is an unprecedented time,
Mhm.
the past year. In fact, embedded in my email, there's a quote from me that I attribute to myself that goes back to July of 2020, and that is safety and sanity are paramount during these surreal times. Words to that effect. I don't even know word for word what my own quote was, but
Right.
surreal, I think, is the operative word here. And as a result of that, we've all had to be more empathetic, compassionate, and understanding
Yeah.
in to each other personally and professionally.
Yeah, I think that the humanity that the world is experiencing right now is something I would personally love to see continue, minus all of the cataclysmic things that have happened to us today. But I think the humanity and the way that we've stepped up and come together, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think part of that extension is even you and I connecting to talk about, the preparation and how to quantify your life's experience through the written word. And if you were to start that discussion off with me, where would an author start or an aspiring author?
Well, first of all, what you want to do is have an idea for a book
Okay.
and then figure out why are you writing this book?
Hmm.
Who is your audience? What is your budget? Uh, if in fact you want to hire a ghostwriter who is going to do a bang up professional job on it, there are marketing people involved as well,
Uh-huh.
publishing. So there are a lot of expenses and issues to unpack.
Okay. So if we're looking and exploring a topic, would you recommend, and I'm talking to about emerging and established entrepreneurs. So, restaurateurs, construction, healthcare workers, people that own nursing homes and janitorial companies. How would you approach a business owner to quantify their story in a book?
Well, everybody has a story to tell, whether you're a business person or you are not, or maybe a stay at home mom, but you've lived an interesting life. So, someone like myself, who's a ghostwriter and a seasoned journalist, I come in and really uh, try to tell the narrative in the most compelling way that I can, or advise you uh, if this is something that you want to do on your own
Okay.
to help you get on the right track and figure out what the talking points are, how to outline that story.
Got it. Okay, so creating our story outline under an umbrella of a topic or something that we've experienced or feel that we have some expertise in. So then are there like three rules to establishing, your book outline or even pursuing authoring a book? I mean, like you have to do these three things. What would one of those things be?
Well, I think the first thing would be to just put down on paper um, what it is that you would want to write about. And the outline doesn't have to be 1,000 words and and look like it's something that you would hand into school, like a term paper or bibliography. You don't have to get into the weeds on that. Really, most important thing is to just etch it out with a couple of bulleted points. It could be general, and then from each of those points, you can unpack further
Right.
uh, as you go through time
Okay.
in trying to come up with the vision.
Okay. And I've seen where, so ghostwriter and editor are two different roles in the book
Yes,
writing process. How do you distinguish between what the two of them do?
that's an excellent question because sometimes prospective clients ask me, can you take a look at a manuscript that I already have in the can? I just haven't finished it. I'm not sure if it's any good. I haven't approached a publishing house yet.
Mhm.
And so that's one bucket, putting on my editor's cap,
Mhm.
going through, making suggestions to people, redlining the Word document, if you will,
Yes.
and then even offering ways to spruce it up and just going through and just kind of working my magic.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. And I usually I'll work on an hourly rate for that for editing.
Mhm.
And then the actual ghostwriting, it's a completely different bucket. And that's where the heavy lifting comes in. I will do all of the heavy lifting for the person who wants to tell their story. And so I just put on my journalist cap and schedule a series of telephone interviews that I record
Mhm.
and then have it transcribed with the help of a transcriptionist I've worked with for several years who's located outside Boston.
Mhm.
And really, the time commitment for the small business person, the entrepreneur, is minimal uh, because they just require maybe an hour or an hour and a half conversation. And I will get everything organized and then tell the narrative. And of course, share it with them once they have a chance to look at a first draft. And then there's a final draft that together we work on to make sure that uh, nothing got lost in translation, everything is accurate, so on and so forth.
Okay, so right. So then what I hear you saying is that you can take a concept and then a conversation and have this discovery, very explorative version of communicating with the potential author and really encapsulate and retell that story. I like how you keep describing it as a narrative. So then do you find that when you are retelling the story, that it still embodies the personality, the experience, the culture of the person that that you're writing for?
That's an outstanding question. And I'll give you two quick examples. I did worry about that the very first project I did 10 years ago when I was trying to capture the voice of an elderly man who had a very different life experience than my own.
Right.
And I had about 10 hours of um, recorded conversations with he and his wife. And I felt that by the end of the project, I had imbibed his
Wow.
personality, and the book sounded a lot like him and his personality. Fast forward to a year ago when I did my first business book. And I also was concerned, am I going to adequately capture the voice
Right.
of my subject so that it really flows and it sounds like him?
Mhm.
And by the end of that project, I also felt like, you know what, I nailed it. I don't know how I did it, but it's really kind of an abstraction when you get right down to it
Mhm.
to think, how do I capture someone's voice? But when you're seasoned, you've been around the block as long as I have, um, as a journalist and a ghostwriter, it is kind of a sixth sense and it just comes out that way. And that really, I think, is one of the most satisfying parts of becoming involved with someone in trying to tell their narrative in book form.
No, I love that. And I'd like, well, that's a gift. That's a gift for you to be able to embody. You're almost like an actor. You're a paper actor, Bruce.
Exactly.
That
I
you
couldn't
can,
have said it any better,
yeah,
from my old Hollywood days.
Yeah, exactly. You can take the voice of a business owner, or and then give it the character without losing, I'll call it, the flavor of the actual person who's supposed to be the face of this book or the face of this brand. So that, I think, is absolutely wonderful. And then you touched on, I guess I want to kind of lead into where the success, or how to measure success. I know there's, monetization opportunities, there's all this like digital platform stuff, but how would you characterize, or could you give us an example of a successfully ghost written book?
Absolutely. So success is relative. You can measure it monetarily or try to go beyond that. With the first project I had, the memoir, this gentleman, he was a grandfather and a great grandfather. The purpose of his book was what we call in my industry a legacy book. So
Okay.
he wanted to leave behind his legacy, and incredible story, mostly to the younger parts of the family, to the grandkids and the great grandkids, and hope that they would pass that along and share it with their kids and so on and so forth. So that tends to be the rule with a lot of memoirs. Really, what have you done in your life, and what has your legacy been like, and to be able to document that.
Mhm.
With a business book, it's a different ball game. What you want to do is essentially have some kind of a tool in your toolkit for lead generation. And when self-publishing, which we now largely refer to as independent publishing, started to grow into a cottage industry,
Okay.
the I'd say the common denominator with so many of these self-published or independently published books was, this is the purpose really is going to be as a lead generation um, for us to uh, first of all um, cement our authority in whatever area of expertise that we're dealing with.
Okay.
We have instant street cred to say that you're a published author. That's the ultimate calling card in business. And to be able to share that with a prospective client is worth its weight in gold. It separates you from the crowd in any area in business that you're in. It just kind of puts you right to the top. It elevates your position, furnishes your brand, and it can be used as a source of revenue. So there's a difference between self-publishing and the traditional route, going with the big publishing houses
Yes.
in terms of revenue. It's a pretty significant difference. So it's something that I have had to research because customers have questions about that. So, for instance, um, royalties, book royalties when you're self-publishing could be anywhere from 40 to 60%. But
Of
when you are
I'm sorry,
going,
of the publishing price of the book or the cover price of the book?
yeah, of the, I believe, of the cover price of the book, and
Okay.
then 12 to sorry 10 to 12% royalties when you're dealing with major publishing house who's going to have uh, much more control over the project. They're going to get the lion's share of revenue
Mhm.
from that. So this is really why independent publishing has grown so much to this point, because it enables average people who are not rich and famous to be able to benefit monetarily
Right.
from the investment that they make in publishing their own book.
Yeah. Sort of what YouTube did to television.
Exactly.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand. So then so for someone that is in, for the emerging and established entrepreneurs that are watching this and would like to establish authority in their industry or in their field, what's the best way to connect with you? So for the guidance and all the knowledge base that you're sharing today, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, if somebody Googles my name, my website is the first um, URL that comes up. So it's bruceshutan.com, BRUCESHUTAN.
Okay, I'll include the link to your bruceshutan.com website, and I'll also include the other links to your website, I mean, to your LinkedIn profile as well. And I will do that in the description box below. And ladies and gentlemen, you know where that is. It's right below that little red subscribe button, which if you haven't done so already, please do so. And that way you can be notified of when guests like Bruce and other authorities in their respective industries are on the show. So, Bruce, make this actionable. Give us a call to action. What should every emerging and established entrepreneur within the sound of your voice do? What's one thing we should all
Okay, so what I'm going to do is share a PDF with your viewers.
do? Okay.
And in that PDF, there are almost a dozen questions to ask yourself before you embark on a book project. And they're all really rock solid. I got that from my digital marketing strategist, who is with a company called Scale Up in Australia.
Uh-huh.
And it is absolutely a wonderful roadmap to be able to achieve this dream.
Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you. And insightful. Now you've got me kind of brewing and thinking, what can I put on paper? So we'll have to have that offline conversation about that. But I
You
just
got
truly want to thank you for coming on board. I know that taking our, skill set out of our heads and putting it down on paper is another pivot that maybe business owners might want to explore during these times as another revenue stream. And just having someone like yourself to help guide us on that journey, that is so appreciative. So thank you again for joining us today, Bruce.
Well, Rhonda, thank you too. I really appreciate it so much.